I had been collaborating with someone whose roots were right here in Rockport. Together, we worked on a script while continuing to live in Los Angeles for many years. Through portraying Commander Riker in Star Trek, Jonathan Frakes' career took an unexpected and dramatic downturn. His 2004 film Thunderbirds was a major failure, and the backlash from Hollywood was immediate. Practically overnight, he found himself blacklisted. Calls from studios stopped coming. He was forced to part with personal belongings, and his wife started a store to help them stay afloat. Frakes referred to this period as being in movie jail, vanishing from the spotlight for almost 20 years. But what unfolded afterward tells a story of redemption that Hollywood never intended to highlight. Born on August 19, 1952, Jonathan Frakes entered the world in a modest hospital in Bellefonte, Pennsylvania. Though his parents resided in State College, Bellefonte was the go-to place for childbirths. Frakes once joked that even Penn State professors would visit Bellefonte, not just to see newborns like him, but also because it had liquor stores, unlike State College. His father, James, was a respected English professor, and his mother, Doris, was a devoted schoolteacher. When Jonathan was 5, the family relocated to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, after James secured a teaching position at Lehigh University. That's where Jonathan and his younger brother Daniel grew up. Tragically, Daniel would later succumb to pancreatic cancer in 1997. In the 4th grade, Jonathan was handed a trombone, not by choice but because his long arms suited the instrument. That seemingly random assignment sparked a lifelong appreciation for music. Introduced to jazz by his father, Jonathan quickly became passionate about it. He joined the Liberty High School Grenadier Band, which held a prestigious reputation in Bethlehem. In 1970, the band traveled to Florida to compete in the Festival of States, where they swept top honors in both field and parade events. Their achievement was so celebrated that the mayor named a street after them. Jonathan cherished that memory, often saying the band outshined the football team and people would attend just to watch their halftime performances. Through high school, Frakes enrolled at Penn State University, originally declaring psychology as his major. But that changed abruptly. During a summer job as an usher at a theater festival, a director invited him to step into a role. Witnessing the joy the actors experienced on stage, Jonathan decided then and there to switch to theater arts. He later admitted that while a theater degree might not be the most practical choice, it was life-changing. Penn State, he threw himself into the performing arts. He joined the university's thespians group and performed non-stop, often sacrificing sleep for the stage. Through earning his Bachelor of Fine Arts in 1974, Jonathan took the next step and enrolled at Harvard, where he was accepted into the Loeb Drama Center's professional acting program. He spent his summers working with real theater companies, gaining first-hand experience. According to Frakes, it was the kind of environment where students could be pulled in to fill roles, giving him exposure to professional standards. Surrounded by seasoned actors and directors, he absorbed valuable lessons in both discipline and craft. That intense training laid the groundwork for his future career. Frakes graduated with his degree in theater arts from Penn State in 1974 and set out for New York City to pursue acting, just one among thousands chasing the same dream. Life in New York was far from easy. He worked waiting tables, hauled furniture, and even injured his back on the job. He accepted minor roles with the impossible Ragtime Theater and took part in productions like Eugene O'Neill's The Hairy Ape. Then in 1976, he made his Broadway debut in the musical Shenandoah. One of the more unusual gigs he accepted involved donning a Captain America costume for Marvel Comics, making appearances at conventions. Though far from glamorous, the role taught him how to interact with fans, an experience that would prove valuable in the years to come. In 1977, Frakes got his first meaningful break. He was cast in the NBC soap opera The Doctors, portraying a Vietnam veteran named Tom Carroll. The job provided steady income, but it didn't last long. Once the character was written out, his agent encouraged him to try his luck in Los Angeles. So, in 1978, Frakes packed up and headed west. Life in LA started off slow, but the tides began to shift. Though stardom didn't come overnight, the city offered more television opportunities. He landed guest spots on popular shows like Charlie's Angels, Fantasy Island, The Waltons, Quincy M.E., and The Dukes of Hazzard. While these weren't lead roles, they helped him build a reputation. Audition by audition, he was gaining momentum. In 1979, he appeared in a television movie titled Beach Patrol, which was intended as a pilot for a new series. Unfortunately, it never progressed beyond that initial film. Despite being produced by TV heavyweight Aaron Spelling and featuring co-stars Robin Strand and Christy Dill, the project fizzled, just another dead end in a town full of them. Like many actors in Hollywood, Frakes found himself trapped in the cycle of promising pilots that never materialized into series. He kept working, but the breakthrough still eluded him. Then came 1983. NBC cast him in Bare Essence, a primetime soap based on a previously successful miniseries. It looked like a major opportunity, but audiences didn't connect with the show and it was swiftly canceled. Despite the disappointment, something good emerged from the experience. Frakes met Jeannie Francis on set. Their initial interactions were rocky. He even made a joke about her hair, but destiny had other plans. 2 years later, in 1985, fate intervened again. Frakes and Francis reunited while filming North and South, a sweeping Civil War miniseries. Production lasted 6 months and took them across the American South. This time, something clicked between them. Their relationship began to blossom, and with it, a new chapter in Frakes' professional life was about to begin. After wrapping up North and South, Jonathan Frakes found himself at a crossroads. Despite years of effort, a breakout role still hadn't come. He was in his 30s, and although he was consistently working, the big opportunities just didn't seem to materialize. By 1987, he was one of dozens auditioning for a new science fiction series, Star Trek: The Next Generation. It was a bold attempt by Paramount to revive the iconic franchise, with an entirely new cast and a fresh direction. First, Frakes wasn't a top contender for the role of Commander William T. Riker, the ship's first officer. In fact, he had to audition 7 times. It was a grueling process, filled with uncertainty and second-guessing. But he kept showing up. He kept pushing. His persistence paid off. And he had landed the role that would define his career. The Next Generation was a gamble. Fans of the original Star Trek were skeptical. Critics expected it to fail. But the show slowly won people over. Took time, but by the 3rd season the cast had found their rhythm, and Frakes' portrayal of Riker stood out. Confident yet compassionate, Riker was a natural leader, someone who complemented Captain Picard rather than competed with him. Frakes brought a quiet strength to the role, along with a now iconic way of sitting down known as the Riker maneuver, where he would swing one leg over the back of a chair. On set, Frakes quickly became known not just for his acting but for his attitude. He was warm, approachable, and deeply collaborative. Cast and crew appreciated his humility and sense of humor. Patrick Stewart, who played Captain Picard, later called him the glue that held the ensemble together. Brent Spiner, who played Data, once said Frakes' laughter could lighten even the toughest days on set. But Jonathan wasn't content to just act. From early on, he showed interest in the behind-the-scenes work, directing in particular. He shadowed directors, asked questions, and stayed late to watch scenes being filmed from different angles. Eventually, producers gave him a shot. In the show's 3rd season, Frakes made his directorial debut with the episode The Offspring, a story about Data creating a daughter. The episode was a hit, critically praised and emotionally resonant. From that point forward, Frakes became one of the show's go-to directors. He eventually directed 8 episodes of The Next Generation, and when the series ended, he was given the chance to direct Star Trek: First Contact, the franchise's first feature film without the original cast. First Contact was a massive success. Critics and fans loved it. The film combined intense action with emotional depth and proved that Frakes wasn't just a capable director. He was a standout. He followed it with Star Trek: Insurrection, which didn't receive the same level of acclaim but was still considered a solid addition to the franchise. side of Star Trek, however, his directorial career was more uneven. In 2004, he directed the film Thunderbirds, a live-action adaptation of the British puppet-based television series. It was a high-stakes production, with Universal Pictures and Studio Canal investing heavily in hopes of creating a new blockbuster franchise. But the movie bombed, both critically and commercially. Reviewers panned it, audiences stayed away, and just like that, Frakes went from rising director to Hollywood pariah. He later described the experience as devastating. Practically overnight, the calls stopped coming. Projects that had been greenlit were suddenly shelved. He'd entered what industry insiders call movie jail, a place where failed directors are sent to quietly disappear. Frakes and his wife, Jeannie Francis, had to make major changes. They sold their home, liquidated assets, and struggled to stay afloat. Jeannie opened a home furnishing store in Belfast, Maine, to help make ends meet. Meanwhile, Jonathan took on smaller directing gigs, TV episodes, voice work, anything to stay involved. For nearly 2 decades, Frakes was largely absent from the public eye. But he never gave up. He kept working, kept learning, and kept fighting for his place in the industry. And eventually, the tide began to turn. Jonathan Frakes never lost his love for the craft. Even when Hollywood seemed to have turned its back on him, he kept honing his skills, waiting for the moment he could come back stronger. In recent years, that moment finally arrived. Streaming platforms and nostalgia-fueled reboots sparked renewed interest in Star Trek. CBS launched Star Trek Discovery, followed by Star Trek Picard. Frakes returned to the franchise not just as Commander Riker, but once again as a director. He directed several key episodes of Discovery and Picard, bringing his deep understanding of the Star Trek universe to a new generation of fans. His work was sharp, emotional, and confident, clear proof that he had never really left the director's chair in spirit. Cast and crew respected him not just as a franchise veteran but as someone who genuinely understood storytelling on a human level. His return to acting, though, was what truly surprised fans. When Riker appeared in Picard, older, wiser, and still full of heart, viewers were thrilled. He hadn't lost a step. The scenes between him and Patrick Stewart were filled with warmth, humor, and a sense of history. It wasn't just a cameo, it was a reminder of everything Riker had meant to fans and what Frakes had brought to the character. Behind the scenes, Frakes was still the same man, humble, focused, and endlessly curious. He continued to push himself creatively, always looking for new angles, new challenges, and new ways to grow. And while Hollywood can be a brutal place for someone once written off, Frakes proved that talent, kindness, and hard work can carve a path back from even the darkest setbacks. Looking back, it's easy to see why Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry had fought for Frakes all those years ago. There was something in him, some quiet force that refused to quit. He wasn't the loudest or the flashiest, but he showed up. He learned. He adapted. And when the door opened again, even just a crack, he walked through it like he'd never left. Today, Jonathan Frakes is more than just an actor or a director. He's a symbol of perseverance. A man who faced rejection, failure, and silence, and never let any of it define him. His story isn't just a Hollywood comeback. It's a lesson in patience, in resilience, and in believing in yourself even when others don't. And for fans who watched him rise, fall, and rise again, Jonathan Frakes will always be more than Commander Riker. First, there were doubts about whether Jonathan Frakes could direct. Patrick Stewart wasn't convinced an actor could lead other actors, and Marina Sirtis wouldn't even make eye contact with him that first morning. Their episode had a romantic subplot, and she feared it would get awkward. Brent Spiner, who played Data, showed up with pages of notes to protect his character. But Frakes didn't assert authority or try to dominate. He stayed focused on performances, observed closely, and let the work speak for itself. By day 2, Stewart's skepticism faded, Sirtis was laughing again, and Spiner shelved his notes. Cast began to see what Frakes had already proven. He was trained for this. What they didn't notice was the stealth directing Frakes was doing. On days he had scenes as Riker, he'd show up an hour and a half early to plan every camera angle. He already had shot lists worked out and had prepped with the cinematographer. While others took lunch breaks, Frakes secluded himself in the editing bay to study footage. No one asked him to do this. He just did. His secret to camera expertise came from long, boozy nights with cinematographer Marvin Rush at a bar called the Warp Core. Over glasses of Macallan 18, Rush would sketch lessons about lighting and framing on bar napkins. Frakes kept those napkins, 13 are still framed in his office. So when Paramount needed a director for Star Trek First Contact, Frakes wasn't their top pick. Names like Ridley Scott and John McTiernan had already declined. But Frakes knew Star Trek better than anyone, from tone to characters to world building. Eventually, they gave him the job. He had 10 weeks to prepare and 12 to shoot, vastly different from the 7-day TV schedule he was used to. He studied classics like Jaws 2001, A Space Odyssey, and Close Encounters, even digging into Cameron's and Scott's work. Pressure was intense. This was his first big feature. One major pivot came with the introduction of the Borg Queen. Originally, the Borg were supposed to remain a faceless collective, but Paramount insisted on a central villain. That's when the concept of the Queen was born. Casting her wasn't easy. They needed someone both seductive and terrifying. They found that in Alice Krige. Her eerie look, pale skin, wire-like hair, and elongated head took hours to apply. Her entrance scene, where her upper torso descends and connects to her spine, became the film's most iconic moment. Film spent 5 months perfecting that single shot. Everything in First Contact was bigger. Borg makeup that used to take an hour now took 5. Getting into costume added 30 minutes and getting out took 90. They had 50 slots for makeup artists but fewer than 20 on hand. As the shoot went on, the makeup became more extreme, more wires, more goo. The Borg looked like they were oozing oil, adding to their horror. For the Queen's floating entrance, they built a special rig and used digital tricks and blue suits to sell the illusion. It worked. First Contact was a success. Fans and critics praised it. Patrick Stewart even called it the best-looking Star Trek movie. Frakes was then tapped to direct Star Trek Insurrection, but the magic didn't strike twice. Reviews were mixed and the story fell flat. Stewart later claimed even Nemesis, which Frakes didn't direct, had improved on parts of Insurrection. The disappointment slowed Frakes' momentum. Then came 2004's Thunderbirds, a high-budget adaptation with stars like Bill Paxton and Ben Kingsley. But the film bombed hard, losing around $57 million. Critics were brutal. Audiences stayed away. After that, Frakes said no one returned his calls. He called it movie jail. He sold off belongings, left London, and moved to Maine. His wife opened a store to help support them. Frakes hasn't directed another feature film since. But he didn't stop. He returned to TV and to Star Trek, directing episodes of newer series and others like The Librarians. As he put it, TV became a place where you can take a swing and nobody notices who directed it. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. Back in 1985, Frakes hadn't set out to find love on a set. He was just doing his job on the Civil War miniseries North and South. 32, he wasn't well known. Then he met Jeannie Francis, already a TV star working alongside Patrick Swayze and Leslie Ann Down. First it was professional, but during a Memorial Day break trip to New Orleans, everything changed. They'd actually met before on a short-lived show called Bare Essence, but the timing was wrong. He was nearly 30, she was 20. North and South gave them another shot. Somehow she took a chance on me, Frakes says. Why she would go out with me is a mystery. They married on May 28, 1988. That was over 38 years ago, an eternity in Hollywood. Jeannie never appeared in Star Trek, but she didn't need to. As Laura Collins on General Hospital, she's been a pop culture icon since 1977, with over 890 episodes under her belt. First, she was the bigger star. But Frakes soon found his own spotlight as Commander Riker. They supported each other through it all. He often runs lines with her for her soap shoots, 30 pages a day. They raised 2 kids, and their daughter Eliza is now following in their footsteps as a writer and actor. Behind the success, though, lies pain. Frakes lost his brother Daniel to pancreatic cancer in 1997, just a week before his daughter was born. They'd moved to New York together in a beat-up '67 Chevy van, chasing dreams. When Daniel was diagnosed, doctors attempted a major surgery, but the cancer had already spread. They gave him 6 months. At the time, survival rates for pancreatic cancer were only 4%. Frakes was devastated but turned that grief into purpose. For over 25 years, he's worked with PanCAN, the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network, to raise awareness and funding. In 2022, he helped launch Trek Against Pancreatic Cancer alongside fellow Star Trek actors like Armin Shimerman, Kitty Swink, an 18-year survivor, and John Billingsley. Each year on April 29th, they participate in PanCAN's Purple Stride Walk in cities nationwide. Frakes usually starts at Santa Monica Pier. Their team has raised tens of thousands of dollars. Thanks to their efforts, survival rates have increased, from 4% to around 11 to 12%. Still far too low, but improving. In 2022 alone, PanCAN invested $10.5 million in research grants out of a record $25 million year. Frakes speaks constantly about early detection, especially for those with family histories of the disease. He knows how fast it can take someone. That's why he keeps walking, keeps raising his voice, and keeps showing up. After Thunderbirds flopped, he vanished from the big screen. Studios didn't want to risk it. He turned to TV, directing episodes of Zoe 101 and True Jackson VP. Even on these small projects, he used his real name, no pseudonyms. Bit by bit, he rebuilt his career. In 2010, his fortunes shifted. He directed for NCIS, Los Angeles and Castle major network shows. He was no longer the guy who failed at film. He was the guy who kept going. Industry insiders started calling him the sci-fi fixer. He worked on 17 different genre shows: Roswell, The Librarians, Warehouse 13, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Orphan Black. When a show needed help, they called Frakes. He brought structure, pace, and clarity. By 2016, he had directed over 100 episodes of TV. People began referring to him as the genre whisperer. He wasn't flashy, but he got results, blending character, action, and humor where others couldn't. In 2018, it looked like a full comeback was near. CBS greenlit a reboot of Beyond Belief, Fact or Fiction. Frakes would direct every episode and return as host. Fans were excited. But just 3 days before filming, CBS pulled the plug. Creative differences, they said. It was déjà vu. The original series had faced network issues and was cancelled. Now the reboot was dead too. Still, Frakes didn't stop. In 2021, he revived the show in Germany as X Factor, Das Unfassbar. They shot in LA, different network, different country, same strange stories, same calm voice asking viewers, "Do you believe it?"